So now I will switch back to English to do my presentation, and it will be on a very long name, International Satoyama Initiative and Globally Important Agricultural Heritages Systems. But first, I think for some of our friends, I think you may be hearing the word Satoyama for the first time. So for these friends, I would just like to simply explain what it means. Well, Satoyama, from the word, you would know that it's Japanese. And yes, it's a Japanese word. It's actually quite a complex concept, but usually it is my own interpretation. I would just interpret it as inhabited nature. Because Sato, the word Sato in Japanese means villages. Well, or basically it means human settlements in the rural setting. And Satoyama, the word Yama means the mountain, but collectively we refer this to anything that's on the land. So they are land settlements or terrestrial human settlements. And then you have the coastal version, which we call the Sato Umi. So it's the coastal settlements. So when we say Satoyama, Sato Umi, it basically means inhabited nature in the rural setting, on land, or at sea. But what's important about this concept of Satoyama is that human beings are central to the concept because it's inhabited, because there's human presence, there's human participation, so people is the key to the nature. And between the land and the sea, there are social, ecological linkages, and not only spatial, but also socially, there are linkages. So when we think of Satoyama, Sato Umi, it's very hard to think of them separate. But of course, every country differs in their geographical, spatial scale. So, but especially for island countries like Japan, and similarly Taiwan, where our land and our sea, it's very closely located together. It's very hard to think of them as separate entities, but we think of them as a connected, one holistic whole environment. And I think you would hear about this concept, forest, land, river, sea connection. I think it's becoming a buzzword in Taiwan now. Very often now you also refer to what we call in Japanese, Morikawa Sato Umi. Actually, the Japanese call it differently. They call it the forest, land, river, sea connection. But I know in Taiwan, you call it the forest, river, land, and sea. It's slightly different, but the concept is the same. But what it essentially means is that the environment should be considered as a whole, from the mountain ridges to the coral reefs in the sea. So this is not something new. Well, I think in the field of the integrated coastal management, we often talk about from ridge to reef, mountain ridges to coral reefs. So this is something international, but it has not been really championed so much. But so in the Satoyama concept, we want to have people understand the importance of the connection between the land and the sea. But as I said, it's not only the integrating of the physical landscape and seascapes, but it's also the integration of the different sectors: forestry, agriculture, fisheries, and tourism, or any other production industries that's located in the whole landscape that uses the natural capital. And of course, with the integration of the various sectors, it's also the integration and the coming together of all the people involved, multi-stakeholders. So when we think about this connection, it's not only the land, it's not only the space, it's not only the environment, but it's also about the people, that we must work together. So with that, I will just briefly go through the Satoyama initiative. I think our friends in Taiwan are very familiar with that, but it is an initiative that was launched at the COP10 CBD in 2010. And from the initiative, we launched this international partnership for the Satoyama initiative. It's a long name, so in short, we always call it IPSI. In short, IPSI. It's basically a platform to get together people around the world, organizations around the world who truly believed in promoting social ecological production landscape and seascapes. Well, this is effectively the English name for Satoyama and Satoumi because it sounded too Japanese, so we wanted something that we can all relate to, well, in the English name. And it's a very long name, so we call it SEPAS for short. So I'll be using SEPAS in my speech, so you know that I'm referring to actually Satoyama Satomi. Well, so at the United Nations University, we now serve as the Secretariat, and I'm part of the Secretariat team. And we now have 230 members, organizations around the world. They can be government, they can be NGOs, NPOs, university, individual community, not individuals, but community groups, anybody. So, and it's free. The membership is free. So you just need to send us an application form and tell us what you're doing, a good case study of what you're doing, and then we will review it and we will welcome you to the family. And this is a platform that promotes networking, collaboration, and also research. And as my colleague Raj mentioned, which Taiwan is also very actively involved, and we are very thankful about that. And basically, this is what the initiative is. It's actually initiated by UNU and also the Ministry of Environment Japan. And our aim is to realize this global effort to realize societies in harmony with nature and promote the understanding of SEPAS. Because we truly believe that it contributes to the well-being and the conservation of biodiversity. So this is just a rundown of what we do. We manage projects, we also manage the network, and we also give some advice to national networks around. We have Japan national networks. We also have the Taiwan national networks, which you call TIPSY. Yeah. And so the landscape approach and its benefits, we believe that because SELPs support biodiversity by providing us with goods and services needed for our well-being, and we believe that it has to be a mutual benefiting relationship between human and nature. And it doesn't have, and it should not be just a landscape of a mono production. It should have a diverse production. So it have to be a mosaic of habitats because diversity increases your resilience to change and environmental shocks. And also, it's just not only conserving the environment, because we know that with human presence, there will be culture. People stay there to develop a love for the place, and they develop a love for one another. So they would form their own culture. And through living in that environment, they will develop knowledge over the years. These traditional wisdoms that they will pass on to generations, and in turn forms the cultural identity of that place. So we believe that SELPs not only conserve the environment, but it also create the community. And so this is some of the work that we are doing at IPSI, which I won't go through in details today. And we have a very good website, and you can go up. We have a lot of good case studies in, well, a lot of publications that we already have now on the website, so I wouldn't bore you with all these details. But today, I was asked to talk about another program, which I was actually, and I'm still actually, one of the leading researchers in the UNU on this GIAS, what we call the Globally Important Agricultural Heritage Systems. So at COP CBD in 2010, it was held in Japan. And so Japan has to showcase to the world how they actually conserve and live in harmony together with nature. So they have to showcase their Satoyama sites, and one of which was the Noto Peninsula, Ishikawa Prefecture. And these people were living were still keeping a lot of traditional way of agriculture, but they did not find that it was something really unique or special. But at COP10, it gave them the opportunity to welcome international audiences and people to visit them. And through the foreign eyes, they were shocked to learn that, wow, their tradition is something so special, and that people encourage them to go on with their traditional way of living. And that sort of inspired the local communities, including the local governments, to want to do more. But after COP10, then what's next? So at UNU, we thought about how we could then take the sepals of Japan, for example, the case of Noto, to a further step. And then my boss, he used to be the senior vice rector of the United Nations University. His name is Professor Takeuchi, in Chinese, 武内和彦教授. So he thought, he knew about the FAO's, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization's initiative of the GS, the Agriculture Heritage. And he looked at the principles and he think that although this GS initiative at that point was only meant for the developing countries, these principles can also be applied in Japan's context. And so he liaised with FAO and say that Japan would like to consider applying to GS. And at the same time, UNU, we worked with the local people of the Ishikawa prefecture and there's also another destination at the same time. It was in Niigata prefecture, Sado, Xinxie Xian, Zodu-dang. And we worked with the local communities and we encouraged that you can try to have this application, and we did try, and successfully they were designated in 2011, Noto here, and also the other site, Sado, which is the first designations for a developed country. So just for many of you who may or may not have heard of GS before, it is now an official FAO program in 2016. And now, but we only have about 52 designations over 21 countries, and you can see from this map, it's mostly concentrated in Asia. And yes, 3/4 of the designations are now still concentrated in Asia. And we finally have our first European GS designations in April this year. Now we have Italy, Spain, and Portugal coming on board too. So there is a global movement to expand this concept of agriculture heritage systems on the global scale as well. And to give you a little bit background about GS itself, it was first started as an initiative for just like a project for 5 years or something at the Rio, at the Earth Summit in Rio in 2002. At that point, it's when the world has started to come together and seriously think about sustainable development. And so FAO, as one UN organization, also thought about how we can actually also conserve these traditional agricultural systems of production. But of course, FAO's mission has always been to eradicate or solve hunger issues. Agriculture intensification was also necessary then, but at the same time, we also understand that not all landscapes are suitable for this kind of mass production, mass agriculture. And very often, there are many smaller scale agricultural systems, often traditional, although look primitive, doesn't look too efficient, but they actually conserve more culture, knowledge, and all the principles and concepts that what makes agriculture, more important than just producing food. So FAO rolled this initiative out to try to provide a framework to safeguard these often marginalized traditional agriculture systems. So this is still an old definition, but still a working definition of GS by FAO now, is that there are remarkable land use systems and landscapes which are rich in globally significant biodiversity, which all evolve because of the co-adaptation of this community with its environment. So, and it's all for sustainable development. And so why does a developed country needed GS. It was first meant to be a program meant for the developing. Well, to Japan, their traditional agriculture, forestry, and fisheries that maintains their service and the traditional culture and biodiversity are thought to be very important assets of their own country. But they are also at the crossroads now because they face the crisis of inheritance, because of overage societies, depopulation, and just young people don't want to be working in the primary industries. But Japan is also a very small country. Well, when Japan compares itself to other countries, it knows that it cannot produce as much, produce a lot of agriculture products. It doesn't see itself a major agricultural country. But as my boss, Professor Takeuchi, puts it, Japan is not a major agricultural country, but it is an agriculture superpower, which means the foundations of the country, the identity, is based on the fact that because Japan is an agriculture-based society, so they are rich in agriculture's culture. So it is important to keep agriculture because it keeps the identity. So with that, we have to really come back and think about the way of life, the traditional way of life. Is it worthwhile to conserve them? And yes, so we think that Japan can have this opportunity by signing up to GS, provide them this chance to rethink about how they want to keep their traditional agricultural systems, and also help the local people to regain their pride and confidence in themselves. Of course, through that, also rejuvenating their economy, and that most importantly, to pass these remarkable agricultural systems on to the next generation. And so now, by 2018, there are 11 GS destinations in Japan. And I believe most of our Taiwanese friends love Japan and visit Japan very often. But you may not have heard of these places in Japan. So I strongly encourage you, in your next holiday to Japan, try to go to one agricultural heritage systems. And I think you will have a totally different experience from your conventional tourism experience in Japan. They are spread all over the country now. It's quite amazing because Japan is not a very, very big country compared to other countries. The next, Japan is actually the second next country with the most vaccinations. The first is China, and China now has only 15. Well, China has a national vaccination system, and there are 93 in the national system. So China has a long list of potential GIs coming on our way. But you see, like Japan, actually people are trying to rethink about how they should value their traditional systems. And so what is GIs, and how are they even recognized? Based on what kind of criteria? So in GS vaccination, this whole graph here basically sums up what we are looking for when we are looking at GS. Well, first, because it's globally important, you have to have some global significance. And when we look at it in terms of historical and contemporary relevance, and whether it's sustainable, it has to be sustainable. And also the biocultural diversity. So this is another new term that I'm talking about. It's not only biodiversity, but it's also with the cultural aspect. So it's the biocultural diversity, because central to this biocultural diversity thinking is that often we decide what happens to nature because of what we use and how we engage with biodiversity. So culture and nature goes together. So this is biocultural diversity, this concept. But basically, we always look at the 5 main criteria that we asked of the applications. Here being 1, food and livelihood security. 2, agrobiodiversity. 3, local and traditional knowledge systems. 4, the culture, value, and social organization. And 5, the landscape and seascape features. And then also you will have, to give us an action plan. Telling us how good you have been doesn't make sense. You also have to tell us what will you do from here. So the action plan now is highly important. When FAO, when they consider your application, they also look at, so what kind of policy strategies, what kind of multi-stakeholder mechanisms you have that you are serious about conserving your GS. So we need a very good action plan here. But I'll go through with you the criteria. So for the first criteria on food and livelihood security, I would personally interpret this as the economic aspect of the criteria. So agriculture, and when I say agriculture here, I just want to say that in FAO, when we say agriculture, it also means forestry, fisheries, livestock, breeding, everything is considered as agriculture. So when I say agriculture, I actually mean all the industries. So agriculture is important not only as an industry, but when in producing food, but we also have to think of the livelihoods that's connected with it. And it has to also be able to supply stable food for the local people. And it's not only the primary industry itself, but also the secondary ones like the processed foods and everything, or the retail or the restaurants or whatsoever that are interrelated or dependent on agriculture sector. So this is where we think it's the economic side of the criteria. But of course, traditional agriculture systems is not only about production, it's not only about the money or the food. The second criteria comes to remind us that agriculture is also important because we also have to look at agriculture biodiversity. So to me, this is the ecological and biodiversity aspect of the whole system. And what do we mean by agrobiodiversity? In terms of the varieties, in terms of the traditional varieties that you have, especially, it's not only the amount, it's also the types that you have. And it's also about the genetic resources that you keep, not only keep as seeds, but also basically still growing. It can be in small quantities, but varieties, in terms of number, is more, it's just as important. And also about the ecosystem that supports the agriculture system, and which in turn contributes to the overall biodiversity conservation of the environment. So, and recently we like to use the word agroecology, which many of our speakers have constantly mentioned in the past 2 days, the whole agroecology aspect of this. And the third is knowledge systems and adapted technologies. To me, it's the technical aspect. But this is also really important because it's the ancestral wisdom and skills. You know, our ancestors, they may not be genius, but they pass on their wisdom to us through many times of mistakes, many times of failures, and going through hardships, and to be able to pass down to us what really works. So these kind of traditional wisdoms, or even their perceptions of life, actually is a very good reminder of how we should live in harmony with nature. And so learn from that, we can actually get some clue to solve some of the issues that we're facing now. So it can be in the form of the farming practices. It can also be what to do what, when to plant what, and when to fish what. So it can be everything that they know that's passed on to us about how they interact with the environment. And then we also have the cultural value systems and social organizations. You know, very often, especially in the parts of Asia and Africa, we don't farm alone. We usually farm in the community and we work with people. So then culture will be there. But we don't only just farm. We develop the culture outside of farming, be it religious-based or be it just communal-based. So there's a lot of culture things that comes out of agriculture. And also, when you have people, you would have interactions, you would have leadership, you would have organization. So what are those communal rules that were set to do things? What were those social structure within the communities, those values that was being passed on? So this part also capture the value part of it, but also very importantly, when we're talking about agriculture, essentially it's food, because we're going to eat the products. So it's also about food culture. So what is the local food culture? And this is very important because often the local food culture supports the local food production. If I decide that I will grow potatoes from tomorrow, and I stop growing my traditional vegetables, then I will not eat those vegetables and I will lose my traditional food culture. But if we have a love for traditional foods, we will want to grow that indigenous vegetables, and we won't want conventional agriculture products. So it's a two-way relationship. So recognizing the value of your own local food culture is also very important in supporting your agriculture heritage systems. And lastly, the fifth criteria is remarkable landscapes and landscapes and seascapes. For this is basically the land use aspect, but it shouldn't just be the scenery. It's more of the land use. How clever are you in using limited space and diverse landscapes to produce mosaic production landscapes. So it's more the land use aspect of this landscape, which as a result form this beautiful landscape. So very often we think that this criteria just need to show the very beautiful scenery of the farming community. No, we say that we want to know why and for what reasons and how did you adapt to this landscape to have this kind of production which result in this scenery. So this is the relationship. And so for that, as like you see, the Noto, Satoyama, and Sato Umi is the concept that the Noto Peninsula had, and they proposed it to FAO and was designated in 2011. And when we look at them, and all the examples I used just now was Noto examples, and you can see that this basically sums up that GIAST is not only about the production itself, because agriculture essentially is also about the biodiversity, the knowledge, the culture, and the land use in our interactions with nature. So when we think about agriculture, we have to have this holistic view. And this is what GS truly believes. And Japan, being a developed country, feels that the 5 criteria alone are not enough for them. So they have their own national standards, or they just raise the hurdle from themselves. But Japan think that with that, apart from the 5 criteria, they need to have their own trees perspective to make sure that this GS is sustainable. And basically, these are the following 3 perspectives. First, enhance resilience. This actually refers more to the ecological resilience as well, integrating traditional and modern scientific knowledge to understand about our nature. And then we have to enhance the social, but ecological and also the social-economic resilience of our lands, our GS against all these changes. And number 2 is basically the social part, to establish new commons. So it always used to be that, the agriculture land belongs to the farmers or belongs to the local communities, belongs to the rural communities. We people living in the urban has nothing to do with it. No, we're saying that it's not only the people who live there, but also us, people who benefits from their production. So we, the people in the urban, would also have a responsibility to also support them. So this urban and rural linkage is just very important for us to form this multi-stakeholder, or what we call new commons, kind of working relationship. And in Japan, most farmers grow their food, and then after that they just give it to the farmers' cooperatives. Basically, they have nothing to do with the selling part. But this has been so and I wouldn't say that it wasn't good, but the thing is that now, if farmers think that they want to make their products more known to the public directly, or they want the public to see their faces, they can actually try to go on to do direct selling, or create more innovative way of selling their products. So we encourage them, you can create new business models to add value to your products. You do not have to sell your products through the conventional way. So we encourage them to try out this. And what is GS? There's so many, there's now 52. Basically, we can categorize them into 3 types, which I would think that those that are based on designated based on farming practices, or on genetic resources, or as a landscape land use system. So basically, these are the 3 kinds of GS that we are seeing so far. And very often I'm asked, like, so what makes a GS? What do you recommend as a GS? And I would tell them, the GS must first have a story to tell. Oh, please, we want to be GS, but please tell us why. So you must be able to say why and how this system has been formed. And why does it continue to exist? And why should it continue to exist? So what relevance it have in the future? But also more importantly, what is your vision? What do you want to say? What is your message? There's so many GS in the world, but what do you want to say from your GS? That we are sustainable? Oh, sorry. Okay. I did it again. So someone turn this on back for me. So can someone turn this back on for me? So we must have be able to tell us why it continues to exist. And then GS must also be unique in a sense, because there are many similar systems in the world, but you at least tell us how is it different from other systems that has been designated so far. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, okay, I'll just keep on going back. And they must be representative, at least representative of your country's agriculture. Well, I'm not trying to say that sometimes the applications are political. Some people who just want to just raise their hands and we are better than others. But the country at least have to first recognize and evaluate them that this is representative of the country. So actually in GS, the applications come through FAO through the Ministry of Agriculture. So the country will also, the central government will also have to take part in this and to then have your own system to decide that it's representative of your country. Then it should also have a certain length of history. Well, this is still debatable, but for example, China would say that at least all our national systems, our global systems should have at least 100 years of history. Well, in Japan and Korea, they would take it around that, but we would think that at least after the Second World War, at least 70 years or 80 years is okay. And it should have, it should include interactions with the wider environment, so it's not, I'm only doing agriculture. So the main concept of my GS is agriculture. Well, yes, your core concept can be agriculture, but you should not ignore your interactions with forestries or fisheries if your system is located near to other relevant or related sectors. And it should not focus on the product, but the produce. This may be a little difficult to translate, but very often we're saying that, is it about the wine? Is it about the cheese? It's not the wine, it's not the cheese, it's the grapes, it's the milk. So we have to focus back on the production itself first, rather than the product. Although the product supports the produce, we know, but because GS looks at the production system, so it's more on the produce. And of course, we must have the political will of the local governments and the central governments to commit into this. But also importantly, we should have the commitment of the farmers and the stakeholders to participate to ensure sustainable conservation. And also, personally, I feel that the system must have the potential for young generations to inherit it, which means that you're certain that by having this destination will give you the opportunity to relook at your value of the GS system. But at the end of the day, are there young people interested? Will your young people be interested? And are you giving a chance for them to be involved? Because a real heritage is only a heritage if it is inherited. So people often forget about this heritage, but if it's not inherited to the next generations, it's not a heritage. It's just a monument of a past. So, so what happens to Noto after GX destination? It's into its 7th year. For example, then people start to have eco-friendly cultivation certifications, which is a good start, because before that, farmers don't think they need to. Eco-friendly cultivation, no, I don't think we're good enough, because Noto itself is quite a well-known rice production area, and people known for good quality, so they don't think that they need to do something further. But after the destination, after the international interest in them, then the farmers, together with the farmer cooperatives, came together, and they said that, okay, we should do more, and then they started to go on branding their products, but also moving towards more eco-friendly production. And then, of course, it's not only in terms of the products, but also they start to work with other designated GS, and they also hosted the international forum. So it encouraged more interactions, and that, in the process, further revived the confidence of the people. Okay. And then, of course, there are many other schemes around Japan. I'll just briefly go through certification schemes of products, which it's now on the GS site level. There's not national certification scheme yet, and I don't think there will be. But also in terms of the agriculture, tourism related activities, they find it an opportunity to boost their tourism in terms of agro-tourism, eco-tourism, or green tourism, or blue tourism, in that sense. And you know the Japanese, they're very good at design. So they start to design their individual logos. And these logos actually work quite well because they put it on their banners everywhere in the streets. And the local people actually didn't know that they were vaccinated. So seeing that every day, reminds us that we are an agricultural heritage site. And then they started to collaborate with other GS sites within Japan. And even, for example, the site in Shizuoka that grows tea, collaborated with GS that grow rice, and they make the brown rice tea, something like that. Then they have also products collaboration between them. And then as the network grow bigger, then they come together and have trade fairs in Tokyo, Osaka, big cities, which one prefecture or one GS site alone probably wouldn't be able to do that. And then there's a lot of things I want to say about GS, but I couldn't, but I have put it into the book. And you can download it on the United Nations University website. I put the QR code here, but I don't know whether you can scan it from where you're sitting. It's free for download, so I hope that you can have the opportunity to read. Basically, in this book, I put together the voices of many of the farmers, the people who are on the ground. Why do they want to come onto GS? So I want you to maybe take some time to see and understand why they want to come on GS. So can I turn the page? I thought this would be printed, so I left it here for you. But anyway, so I'm counting to 3, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so what I want to say is that GS should have a multi-stakeholders participation. So it's no longer about only the farmers, the fishers, the local government, the people, the local residents that have nothing to do with farming also, and the urban residents like us, but also the media, the academia, everybody who benefits from agriculture. We should all be creatively thinking on how we can play a part to support GS. And I have some questions from my Taiwan colleagues that because you are not part of FAO, then you cannot sign on to GS. But if you think that GS works for you, you can actually take GS criteria as a reference. And then I strongly encourage you to think of national systems of agricultural heritage systems, because it's not only the GIAS platform that you can have international exchanges with other countries. For example, UNU is the secretariat for Japan, for the East Asia Research Association for Agricultural Heritage Systems. Again, it's a long name, so we call it ERAS. And this is basically a platform of researchers, the academia, and also the practitioners to interact. And I think Professor Li Guangcheng, you have attended the conference in China last year. So if you have a national systems and you have a network, you can have about bilateral exchange, and you also have a multilateral exchange. So I think the opportunities are there. So I would strongly encourage you to think of how you can, on a national level, search for and conserve your GIAS. And GIAS, because it's a United Nations FAO's program, it contributes to SDGs, and I wouldn't go into details here. But if you look at all the criteria, they actually input to certain SDGs, and as a program on the whole, it actually contributes to the 17 SDGs. And recently in FAO is also thinking about how their initiatives and projects interact with one another. So these are the keywords of how we're thinking how GIAS can actually contribute to the work to agroecology, climate change, agrobiodiversity, and other initiatives. And I personally have written a piece for FAO on agroecology, featuring GIAS, and this can be downloaded on their agroecology portal. And well, this is one video that I don't think we'll be able to show you, but it's about the Shizuoka tea production landscape. And I think this was what CEO Su mentioned. I think that this might be the video that you're seeing that help you understand the purpose of tea production in Japan. So I just want to conclude, give me 1 minute. And I think GIAS in Japan is an example of how it can be extended. The concept of SEPs can be extended to be effectively managed to enhance livelihoods, resilience, and sustainability. And we always tell our GIAS sites that GIAS designation is not only the start, and it's never the end, because there's never an end. So your journey starts from here. And then we tell them, so they ask you, so after GIAS, what do I get? What is the benefit? And I say that I don't know. Because the value of GIAS designation is up to you. It's what you do after GIAS. I think it's the same with other recognition or designation schemes. And most importantly, I think it provides us the opportunity to revisit our value of the traditional agriculture, and it would truly help regain the confidence of the local people and pride. And I think, but GIAS is not cast in stone. It's not about no change, because our ancestors also changed. They adapted to the changes of the time, and they changed. So it can be dynamically conserved, so we can also think of creative ways of how we're going to conserve the GIAS. And with GIAS, it will provide us opportunity to have more international interactions with other good practices and good experience, so that it will also stimulate us to do better. So what I want to say is that often we look at global goals to solve local problems, but I think a lot of global challenges can also be solved using local solutions. So when we look back on what we have, we can also think of how these knowledge can be used to tackle the greater problems that we as a whole community, as the human race is facing. So with that, I thank you.
谢谢我们这个银芳博士。有时间吗？有时间吗？有一个问题吗？需要大家？
因为我应该是讲到55分哈。
对，您讲的非常的精彩啊！
我只要做一个总结，可以吗？
来，我们1分钟给我们银芳再做个总结。
那我的这个最后一个总结呢，我就用中文来说。So I will do my last wrap up in Chinese. So， 那其实我在这里讲了差不多近50分钟，那可能大家就会觉得，为什么这个新加坡人在跟我讲农业？我想对我新加坡有认识的朋友应该知道，我们新加坡是有农业，可是没有像不是一个农业国家。那其实我从小我是华人嘛，那我外婆她其实也是土生土长新加坡人，可是她常常会跟我说：“你一定要把饭吃完， 不然那对农夫很不尊敬。那当时幼小的我就会想，农夫谁呀？因为新加坡我们没有农业，我不知道。当时我们吃的是泰国米嘛，我就想，那这是泰国的某个北北嘛，我都不认识。然后我心里就会觉得啊，好啦，我就吃。可是我外婆她那一辈，其实她都没有到过中国。可是她的父母，那可能她的祖辈就会跟她说，我们一定要很珍惜食物，因为农夫很辛苦。可是我这一代很惭愧的，因为我们没有生长在一个农业的环境上面，所以我小时候长大就是这样子，谁啊，我都不认识。可是后来我想，后来当然长大了，有来到日本，然后也去了很多不同的国家，我就发现其实食物得来不易。我想我不会再多讲为什么，因为大家比我更清楚农业的重要性。可是我想说的是，我希望像我这样子一个不是从农业背景出身的一个新加坡人，能够跟大家分享我这样的现在的工作呢，是因为我也想，我们新加坡虽然是一个都会国家，我们没有农业，可是现在很多国家的小孩也在城市里面长大。你虽然是个农业国家，可是小孩子可能都跟农村没有那个联系，都不认识。可能那些小孩子跟我一样，农夫谁啊？所以我希望我们能够一起努力，让我们未来的小孩子，当我们讲到对农夫会很不尊敬哦，他们可以至少想得起一个农夫的名字，想得起一个农夫的样子。谢谢大家，
谢谢。